Welcome back, everybody, to our next reaction video in the six-part epic history TV series on the Napoleonic Wars. This is part 5, and we are going to be picking up right after the British have successfully pulled their troops out of Spain. A couple of things before we get into today's video. It's an exciting day here on the channel, not only on this channel, but also on my gaming channel, History Guy Gaming. On the gaming channel, probably by the time you're watching this, we will have hit 40,000 subscribers, so I'm excited about that. It took me 2 years to get to 4,000 subscribers on that channel. So in the 2.5 years since then, we've made it all the way to 40,000. So it's been pretty exciting to see that happen. But of course, the big news today is that by the end of today here, at least in the Eastern Time US, we should hit 100,000 subscribers here on Vlogging Through History. I had 1,000 subscribers 4 months ago. I shouldn't say we, because you guys are all part of this community. I've said that before. If you're new, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this journey. I am excited to continue the journey. Super excited to be doing a live stream tonight starting at 6 p.m. Eastern U.S. time. I apologize for our friends in Europe. I know that will be very, very late for you, and it's midweek. But I had to time it based on when I thought we could stream our way to 100,000 subscribers. And if I start at 6 p.m. tonight, I think we can get there during the stream. I don't know what the stream's going to be about. We're probably going to do some Q&A. We'll do some trivia. We'll probably look at some memes. It's just going to be a variety of things, and it might last 3 or 4 hours. We're going to stream as long as humanly possible until we hit 100,000 subscribers. So I'm guessing we'll probably be 300 or 400 away when the stream starts. So we'll see what happens. Join us tonight. The stream is already live, so you can hit the reminder on it so that when it does officially start, it'll give you a notification. So just look on the channel for that and you'll see it. But let's go ahead and continue on with this series on the Napoleonic Wars.
Whether Moore's retreat to Corunna was a British disaster or miraculous escape is still debated.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm interrupting like 5 seconds in, but some of you commented on this after the last episode that that maybe the way that it was portrayed on this video series as this miraculous British escape isn't completely honest about the situation, because it wasn't quite the clean getaway that it kind of appears to be. The British did suffer a lot of losses, not only in terms of manpower, but also in terms of supply materials that got left behind.
And did he abandon Spain in its hour of need, or draw off Napoleon's main force, buying time for others? Either way, Britain's only army had been saved, and would return to fight another day, while Napoleon now faced the prospect of a long war on the Iberian Peninsula, and renewed conflict with Austria, a war on 2 fronts that would challenge his empire like never before. Napoleon had blundered in Spain, but it was years before the scale of his mistake was evident. Then he would say, "I embarked pretty badly on this affair, I admit it. The immorality showed too obviously. The injustice was too cynical. The whole of it remains very ugly."
And he makes a good point there about how the evidence of how bad it was couldn't be seen right away. And this is often the case with history. And this is one of the reasons why I avoid too much discussing topics post, say, 1992, because I think we're too close to those events to really judge them fairly. There's another side to that, which is, of course, is that people who experience things can speak to the realities of them better than anyone, but that doesn't mean they can necessarily speak to the historical context of it and the impact. It takes generations sometimes to fully understand things, and our views of things often soften. You know, for example, when it comes to our view of presidents here in the United States, in the moment when it's very recent history, especially because we have our political biases, we tend to judge too harshly or to be too friendly to someone, and those tend to soften and moderate with time. And so Spain wasn't quite seen to be as bad as people thought it was until later, and you could kind of sit back in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars and see those moments and how they impacted the greater kind of the overall scheme of things.
In 1809, France, under Napoleon Bonaparte, was the most powerful nation in Europe. But the French Emperor's invasion of Spain and Portugal the previous year had failed to deliver the easy victory he'd expected. And with many of Napoleon's best troops and commanders now tied down in Spain, an old enemy prepared to challenge France once more. Austria had been preparing for war with France since her last humiliating defeat at Austerlitz in 1805.
And we talked about this in the last couple episodes, that when you defeat an enemy quickly, sometimes you often haven't defeated them as decisively, even though it seems like, wow, we just went in there, we hammered them, and that was it. And so because of that, they largely remain intact, and as soon as an opportunity presents itself, they can reform and get back out there. You know, it's different when you slowly defeat an enemy and it's total war and you just bring about their almost complete destruction. It takes generations for them to recover from that.
Now, with Napoleon busy in Spain and a British promise of cash subsidies, plus a supporting attack in northern Europe, it looked like the ideal time to strike. This time, Austria's armies would be led by Archduke Charles, Emperor Francis's younger brother. At 37, he was 2 years younger than Napoleon, but already had 15 years' experience of high command. And he was learning from past defeats. He'd begun to reform the Austrian army along French lines, copying Napoleon's corps system and introducing new infantry tactics.
So yeah, I mean, if what your enemy is doing works, learn from it. This is one of the important things that happens in war, is adapting and changing and not being stuck in old ways that aren't working, but saying, okay, you know what, if we don't want the same outcome, we've got to change something. And to their credit, they do that.
Napoleon, warned by his spies that Austria was preparing for war, left Spain and raced back to Paris, arriving on the 24th of January 1809. The French army in Germany, commanded by Marshal Berthier, would need urgent reinforcement. So Napoleon summoned units from Spain, called up young conscripts, and soldiers from his German allies in the Confederation of the Rhine. La Grande Armée was no longer the finely honed instrument of 1805, but with Napoleon at its head, it was still a formidable force. Archduke Charles ordered diversionary attacks in Poland and northern Italy, but launched his main attack against France's ally, Bavaria, on the 10th of April. It came a week earlier than Napoleon had expected and caught the French Emperor by surprise.
Not easy to do.
Charles was relying on a rapid advance, but a last-minute change of plans, torrential rain, and a slow-moving baggage train slowed progress to a crawl.
So here's the unfortunate thing there. You catch Napoleon by surprise, you're attacking a week earlier than he expected, and then the weather gets in your way. You can never plan for everything. The best laid plans can be completely ruined by a rainstorm.
Marshal Berthier was a brilliant chief of staff to Napoleon, but an indecisive field commander. His forces were too widely dispersed, and Marshal Davout's Third Corps was dangerously isolated at Regensburg. Charles ordered his corps to converge and destroy it. But on the 17th of April, Napoleon arrived at Donauwörth to take over command.
So the story of the enemies of Napoleon's lives, right? They catch an enemy off guard. Napoleon's not there. They're going to have a chance to defeat one of his subordinates, and then he arrives on the battlefield to save the day.
He immediately ordered Davout to withdraw from his exposed position. It was too late for him to escape without a fight. Davout's 3rd Corps was one of the best in the Grande Armée, and in a fast-moving battle across wooded hills, the heroes of Auerstadt threw back the Austrians. Despite the heroism of General Major Liechtenstein, badly wounded, leading his troops forward. 3rd Corps escaped the encirclement. The Battle of Teugn-Hausen was the start of Napoleon's so-called 4-day campaign. First, he used Marshal Lefebvre's Bavarian 7th Corps and a provisional corps under Marshal Lannes to drive a wedge into the Austrian army. Then he pursued its left wing towards Landshut, believing he was following the main Austrian army. French troops and their German allies stormed the town's bridge to win a hard-fought victory. But Napoleon realized that Archduke Charles was not at Landshut.
So I know we're kind of pushing through all these battles, but just again, I want to offer some context here. We're talking about the War of the Fifth Coalition now, which was only 6 months long in 1809. But in that 6-month span from April to October of 1809, we are talking about 300,000 dead. Again, to put that in context for an American audience, that is nearly the death toll for the United States in 4 years of World War II. 400,000 dead for the U.S. in World War II. In 6 months, this one of the, 6 Napoleonic Wars suffers almost that many casualties. These battles are like one after the other, and every one of them you're talking 10, 20,000 dead. And here's another 10, 20,000 dead. Here's 30,000 dead. You know, it adds up so fast. It's just mind-boggling that Napoleon's fighting these wars one after the other, and you're talking millions of dead. And this is 200 years ago, when there are far fewer people in these countries. It's just amazing.
And that, once again, he'd left Marshal Davout to face the main enemy force. Sending Marshal Bessieres in pursuit of the Austrian left wing, Napoleon swung north, falling on the Austrian 4th Corps at Eckmühl.
I love the adaptability here. Napoleon could, and a lot of other generals probably would have said, well, I'm already engaging this Austrian force here with my main army. I might as well take it on, destroy it, then turn north. But Napoleon recognized the importance of going after the main body. So he leaves behind enough men to kind of hold off the Austrians and then turns north to come up to where Davout is and meet the main Austrian army. It's just one of those moments that you see the brilliance of Napoleon and his adaptability to the situation.
The French and their German allies won their 4th victory in as many days. But Charles's main force was still intact, and hoping to keep it so, he ordered a rapid retreat across the Danube. The French pursued, storming the walled city of Regensburg, which they knew as Ratisbon, with its vital stone bridge. Napoleon put Marshal Lannes in charge of the assault. When the attack faltered, Lannes threatened to lead the next charge in person, and his men, suitably chastised, took the city. During the siege, Napoleon was hit in the foot by a spent bullet, causing widespread alarm, but it proved to be a superficial wound. Stubborn Austrian resistance had allowed Archduke Charles and his army to escape across the Danube. Napoleon had cut the Austrian army in half, but both sections now retreated in good order towards Vienna. Napoleon led his forces in pursuit, detaching Lefebvre's Bavarian Corps to deal with a popular revolt in Tyrol, and 3rd Corps and the Württemberg 8th Corps to guard his line of communications. Charles chose not to defend the capital.
So it's interesting what he's doing, and this is, again, pretty smart move by Napoleon. He's using his German troops to deal with the popular uprising, to detach off to deal with other issues, while he takes his main army, his elite, the ones that he knows the best, the ones that he knows what to expect from them, he knows how they'll react, he knows the commanders, to deal with the main force.
Which surrendered on the 13th of May after a short bombardment. Instead, Charles and the Austrian army lay in wait across the Danube. Napoleon was now down to 80,000 men, facing 110,000 Austrians. Charles's army had fought bravely and well throughout the campaign, but Napoleon still had a low opinion of Austrian troops and decided to attack. On the night of the 20th of May, French engineers hastily built a series of floating bridges between the river islands of the Danube, and French troops began to cross. By noon the next day, Napoleon had most of Massena's 4th Corps and his cavalry across the river, about 24,000 men and 40 guns, holding the villages of Aspern and Essling. Napoleon expected the Austrians to retreat once more, and that he'd only face a rear guard. But reports soon arrived that the entire Austrian army was advancing against him in 5 attack columns, 90,000 men and 300 cannon. The situation got even worse. The Austrians began to float heavy barges and obstacles downriver to smash through the flimsy French bridge.
So Napoleon's already outnumbered. He hasn't gotten his entire army across yet. And so this is a potentially disastrous situation if he can get cut off with part of his army and be outnumbered 2 or 3 to 1 by the Austrians that are planning an all-out assault, and they've got 300 guns as well.
Each time, Napoleon's only supply route was cut off for several hours, causing critical delays to the arrival of reinforcements and ammunition. The battle began around 2:45 p.m. as infantry of the Austrian 1st Column attacked Aspern. The village was soon under attack from 3 sides. General Molitor's French garrison clung on desperately, fighting hand-to-hand in the streets and suffering 50% casualties. To support the defenders of Aspern, Napoleon ordered cavalry to charge the Austrian 3rd Column.
You know, and we were talking about this yesterday. I was talking with somebody about some of the Civil War battles where you had units suffering 70 and 80% casualties sometimes. And, you know, at this era in history, Napoleonic Wars, the American Civil War, other wars that are going on, it was very common to see units suffering 50 or 75% casualties. Think about that. If you are a member of one of these units on the battlefield where half the people you went into battle with have been killed or wounded, and you continue to fight, it was just a different mindset. I mean, we live in a modern era where if a unit suffered 20% casualties, that would be considered a bloodbath. And for these guys, it was just very, very different.
But they could not break through the Austrian infantry, closed up in their battalion mass formation. At 6 p.m, Archduke Charles ordered General Bellegarde's 2nd Column to take Aspern at any cost. Charles himself rode among the front ranks, urging the men forward. In ferocious fighting, the Austrians took the village. Napoleon immediately sent in newly arrived reinforcements to recapture it. About the same time, the Austrian 4th Column began its attack on the village of Essling, where Marshal Lannes had taken charge of defences while he waited for his own corps to cross the Danube. The first Austrian assault was repulsed. The veteran French cavalry commander General d'Espagne led his cuirassiers in pursuit, but was hit by grape shot and died of his wounds. Around 9 p.m, the Austrian 5th Column finally arrived in position and made its first attack against Essling, which was thrown back by Lannes' troops. As night fell, firing died out across the battlefield, and men got what rest they could among the dead and the wounded.
what an opportunity this has been for the Austrians, and they just couldn't close the deal. They've got a huge numerical advantage. They're attacking. They've got a lot of guns, and they just can't break Napoleon's lines.
Overnight, Second Corps and the Imperial Guard crossed the Danube to reinforce Napoleon's army, which now numbered 71,000 and 150 guns. But then the bridge broke again, leaving Davout's Third Corps still waiting to cross.
One of his best.
Nevertheless, Napoleon decided to attack, using Second Corps to break the Austrian centre. But first, Aspern would have to be retaken. Heavy fighting broke out in the village before dawn. By 7 AM, it was back in French hands. At Essling, fresh Austrian attacks were fought off by General Lasalle's cavalry and units of the Young Guard. With both flanks secure, Napoleon launched his main attack in the centre with Lannes' Second Corps.
So he's not just holding, waiting for the rest of his troops to arrive, waiting for his Third Corps. A lot of generals would have done that. They would have said, you know what, I'm still fighting without one of my best units, one of my best commanders. I will wait for the Third Corps, and when they get here, then I'll launch my attack. Napoleon's like, no, he's outnumbered. He don't care. He's been getting hit. He don't care. He's not got his full force. He don't care. He attacks anyway.
Austrian guns poured fire into the advancing French ranks.
And that's the other thing. He's attacking 300
General
guns.
Saint-Hilaire, leading the attack, a hero of Austerlitz and Jena, had his foot blown off, a wound that proved fatal. Archduke Charles sent his Grenadier Reserve forward to strengthen the line. The French infantry, under torrential fire, began to fall back. At this critical moment, the French bridge over the Danube was broken again, halting the vital flow of reinforcements and ammunition to Napoleon's army. By 2 PM, the French had been driven out of Aspern once more. Heavy fighting continued in Essling, which was briefly captured by the Austrians, then retaken by the Young Guard. Napoleon knew his army could do no more. At 4 PM, he ordered his exhausted cavalry to make a last charge to keep the enemy at bay, then gave the order to retreat. Archduke Charles, whose own army had suffered huge losses and was low on ammunition, was content to watch the French withdraw to the island of Lobau. In the final moments of the battle, Marshal Lannes, one of Napoleon's finest commanders and closest friends, was hit by a cannonball that smashed both his legs. He died of his wounds a week later.
What a moment, though, for the Austrians. Yes, they're exhausted, but do you think Napoleon would have let up in this situation? He probably would have pursued. He probably needed to pursue and destroy Napoleon's army. Then again, he may have known Napoleon still had a Third Corps in reserve that he hadn't used.
It was a deep blow to the Emperor. The two-day Battle of Aspern-Essling was Napoleon's first major defeat, caused by his overconfidence and hasty planning. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and Napoleon avoided a much greater disaster only because of the exhaustion of the Austrian army. The French Emperor had learned new respect for the Austrians. Under Archduke Charles, they had fought bravely, with greater confidence, organization, and leadership.
And those casualty numbers are pretty comparable, again, for an American audience, to Gettysburg. Gettysburg, you had like 23,000 on one side and 28,000 on the other. So pretty comparable in terms of the number of killed, wounded, and missing.
Within days of his defeat, Napoleon had summoned reinforcements to join him on the Danube and begun planning his revenge.
All right, so we'll wrap it up right there. We're going to be getting into the next section, and I guess probably the last one. We might be still one behind, I'm not sure. How much time do we have left? And there's only about 14 minutes left in the video series. So we will definitely be doing more on the Napoleonic Wars in addition to this Epic History TV series. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And make sure, in fact, I'll put the link in the description for the live stream that we'll be doing this evening as we work our way toward 100,000. Thank you, thank you, thank you for helping it to happen. Make sure you check out my gaming channel as well, History Guy Gaming. That link's in the description too. We'll see you again soon.